Welcome back to the Building Bigger Lives podcast. I'm Kathryn Peterson here with my wonderful co-host, Michael Regan. And today we're going to talk about something a little bit more fun. Michael just took a really long trip with Lori, 3 weeks in Europe. And I got to see some of the pictures, like the old days when we set up the slide projector. So we thought it would be a fun time to talk about kind of how to get away and some different trips and how to unplug and how to prep for that. So with that, I'm going to introduce Michael. Welcome back.
Hey, thanks so much. Yeah, and that trip in particular was certainly epic. I would love to talk about it in detail, but I'm sure our podcast listeners are like, "Yeah, no, I don't think I want to hear all about your fantastic times over in Tuscany." But let me assure you, trip of a lifetime. Uh, Really, to your point, I think it got me thinking. I help all of my clients put together a life plan. That's one of the things we do early on in our coaching engagement. And the reason I do it early on is I want to be sure I understand what this person is aiming toward. I want to understand what's important to them, how they define success over a really long period of time. So the life plan tool is excellent because it helps us define what success looks like in lots of areas of life. And one of those inevitably will become, something that looks like fun, something that looks like, hobbies or pastimes, and somewhere in there is usually some travel. So once we start digging into that topic, the question as the coach is always, well, then how do we prepare for that? How do we get you ready for that? And what I've discovered over the last, 10 or 12 years looks to me like three different kinds of travel that my clients prepare for. So I thought we'd talk about that today and see if we can help our clients and our listeners get a better sense of preparation for these three types. So I'll lay them out and then let's just talk about them because I think you and I both experience these. First
Yeah.
will be what we would call the weekend getaway. So this is a trip you're going to take where you're going to take some time off work, maybe on a Friday, maybe on a Monday, maybe it's a Thursday through Sunday. But the idea is it involves the weekend, but you're going to take some time away from your workload in order to make that trip happen. So you have to prepare for how do I do that? The next one I'm going to call just the week vacation. This is that type of trip you might take with your family to go see family or to get away to the beach or to go to the mountains or the lake, wherever your family likes to go. It's the more typical trip that I think people try to take. And then the third, based on the experience I had, and I think one you and your family had last summer, is the more extended trip, the longer getaway. That one's going to be a little more challenging and involves a little more
Mhm.
strategy. So, with that said, let's start with the first, Kathryn. I mean, you've been able to schedule weekend getaways. We've talked about a lot of them over the years. You're really good about doing it. I think what I'd like to do first before we get into the tactics is help me understand the mindset of why a weekend getaway is so important to you.
So to me, what I like about it is you can get a lot of bang for your buck. So you can take just a couple days off of work, which is easier than, let's say, taking a week or 3 weeks, but you can still take a break. You can get away. You can feel like you've just had a little bit of R&R because you're using that weekend. So you can kind of multiply the vacation.
Love that. Love that. So when you're thinking about that, there's probably several different versions. There could be the you getting away with Todd. It could be you getting away with your daughters. Could be you getting away with some girlfriends or go visit your sister or your dad. There's lots of different ways that you might do that. So when you're in that headspace of I need to block out that time, what are some of the things you do to get yourself and then your team and maybe then your partners and clients ready for you to be away for the weekend?
So, for first the team, I think that the weekend isn't so bad, but it's kind of just communicating of, hey, I'm going to be out this day. I'll be checking email, or I won't be checking email, or I will have service, or I won't have service, or setting up those rules for that a little bit of, hey, I'm going to be able to check email, let's say from roughly 8 in the morning on the days I'm gone, but then I'm going to check out. So just setting those expectations for them so that they know that they can get you if they need you. For example, if something urgent comes up, text me because that'll be easy, but I'm going to try to just only check email in the morning. So setting those expectations up for the team, I think is important, but also the family. So, hey, I'm still going to have to check emails sometimes, but I'll do that and then we'll be able to escape and that'll be the plan so that everybody kind of knows what's going on.
Yeah, so I hope the audience is taking notes. I think what I heard first is clear communication. And then second was setting the proper expectations. Third, maybe not as clearly defined, but I think subtly hinted at in there is where are the boundaries too. Like I'm available at these times, but not those
Mm-hmm.
times. I'm gonna check in at this time, but
Mm-hmm.
don't check with me after. And if it's urgent, here's how to reach me. I think all those are really great tips, and I hope for most of us that that resonates because when we've taken that long weekend away, sometimes we make the mistake of thinking I need to go and get away and unplug, but I don't communicate that to everyone, and then I'm the one frustrated when the texts keep coming or the emails keep coming.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that's on me if I'm checking email. Last I checked,
Yeah.
my device will allow me to turn off the auto send receive. So I think that's another thing to think through on the weekend getaway is am I going to let that bing ding alert, disrupt the flow of what I'm doing? Or do I maybe turn it into a manual mode where if I give myself permission to check it, it's not, I'm checking it on my terms, not necessarily
Mm-hmm.
on the terms of the person sending. What about the autoresponder? Are you a fan of it? Do you use it with your email? Do you use it with your text? Or what have you experienced if you have tried it?
I don't, and the reason is because I've learned over the years that people don't always realize I have a whole team behind me. So my team has access to my email, so I don't even use the autoresponder. And either if I'm in the email, I'll forward stuff as needed, or I'll just say, "Hey, please check my email, forward what you need to yourself." And then we don't need the autoresponder because sometimes if I do that, I actually get more calls on my cell because they're like, "Oh, you're out of the office, so I figured I'd call your cell phone." So it's actually been, it does the opposite of my intention. Now, if I'm gone for a while, absolutely, or if my team's out, that's a different thing. But for me, I've learned that it the work will get done by somebody else automatically anyway. I don't need to even tell people that I'm out.
Okay, that's really good. You didn't use this phrase, but maybe we should, put this on the table. This exchange that we're having doesn't necessarily apply to, say, holiday time where
Right,
everybody's out. This
right.
applies to just the normal, you're going to get away for the weekend, but the team's available. One of our previous podcast guests, John Donnelly, just posted recently about this idea of what he calls a hack for teams, production teams, is use a team email address so that the team email is always on 24/7. It's never off. It's just a matter of who's on to receive it. And the
Mhm.
audience doesn't necessarily need to know all that. It's very similar to when you go into your favorite restaurant. You're not walking back in the kitchen to see who's cooking today. You just want to make sure that the meal you expected shows up at the
Yeah.
table. And so I think the team email really helps with that. I think if those of you that have used it understand that, there's probably some ground rules for that as well. But I love the way you just described that. So anything you've ever learned about the weekend getaway that you would say, boy, that was a tough one. I fumbled that ball once or twice before I figured out how to do it really well.
So a couple things. First, I try to block off a little bit of time beforehand and a little bit of time after
Super
because
good.
inevitably you're going to get 50,000 emails and you might need a little bit of time to chill out. There's one person on my team and she like plans it so she gets back at like 10 o'clock at night the morning before. And I'm always like, oh my gosh, how do you even do that to yourself? But she doesn't have a lot on her calendar, so it's easier for her to come in and get stuff done. But for me, I need some time
Yeah.
to unpack, unpack my email, all of those things that you have to do, and just get mentally ready to work again. So I try to do that kind of either way, if I'm taking a long trip or if I'm taking a short trip.
Okay, so you again touched on something that I hope our audience takes note of. That's not just Kathryn winging it. She's got buffer on both ends. She's got some buffer on the way out and some buffer on the way in. And that buffer is really easy to estimate if you think about your typical load of email. So let's say you're going to be gone on a Monday because you did the Friday through Monday travel. That means you're coming back in on Tuesday with the typical load of a Monday plus it's now Tuesday. So do some estimating based on, well, what does it really take me on a normal Monday to at least go through my inbox and my voicemail and make sure I've at least been aware of everything that I might want to delegate out to a team member. If you know that's going to take you an hour, well, have at least an hour of buffer built in to do that. And then to Kathryn's point, think about, is that going to be on a Sunday night when you're exhausted and tired, or in this scenario, a Monday night when you're exhausted and tired, trying to come in hot on a Tuesday? Or do you need to maybe think about where that time fits best? And so all these things are about preparation to make sure you can really enjoy that time away. And no one on your team or in your referral network, or certainly your clients, has to feel any sense of stress because you simply needed a couple of days to unplug and recharge your batteries. Okay, great. We could come back to this one if some other topics bring it up, but let's shift to the week away, because this one I think is the harder one for people. The
Mhm,
weekend, most people figure that out. The week
mhm.
is a little harder because you're really trying to be gone for sometimes upward of 8, 9 days, depending on where the calendar falls. So let's talk a little bit about your best practices when you're going away for a week. How do you set that up? What's similar to the weekend and what's different?
Yeah, so similar, obviously, buffer, things like that, expectations. There might be that I have to, pop in and sign some things, some, initial disclosures, things like that. Luckily, we have a system that allows us to do that while we're away. And then it may just be of, hey, this is our, I try to communicate with my main person here to say, hey, here's our activities for the week. And, I'm really not going to have service at these times, but I'll try to check in with you occasionally. So again, just setting up those expectations pretty clearly. And then also trying to make sure that I have a little bit more unplugged time, maybe checking in a little less so that that week really feels like a break away. And typically, if we're taking a week, we're going somewhere out of the country, and we're doing that in a way that, that is a vacation and is fun, and there is enough unplugging happening.
Okay, so I think that brings up a really interesting delineation that we want to talk about. And that is, sometimes the week away really is unplugged, as you were just starting to describe. And
Mhm.
sometimes it's just a change of scenery. It means, I hear people say this all the time. Yeah, I'm still working that week while I'm away. I'm just, working from the lake, or I'm working from the beach house, or I'm working from wherever they went. And so I want to draw a few distinctions, because what you described is really good for the folks that are really trying to unplug. And I think taking some of those best practices will be wise. But for those of you that are thinking, yeah, I'm not really off work, I'm just off site. Let's talk about a few of those things that might be wise to do. Have you tried that before, Kathryn? Have you been in a situation where you've said, "Hey, I'm still working this week, but I'm just not going to be at the office. I'm going to be somewhere with family or friends, but I'm not trying to check out." Have you tried that before?
A little, but not with family and friends, because I think that messes with the expectations. And if I'm working, I'm pretty intensely working. I'm like at my computer focused, sitting down for 8 hours with maybe some micro breaks in there. But so I don't want to take vacation time from my family to do that. Now, I'll say that I've done that by myself and gotten to a different location and worked. And that is nice, where I might be somewhere else and I'm working all day, but I wouldn't necessarily count that, at least for my mental place, as a vacation, because if I'm still working 8 hours a day, I'm not taking a break.
Yeah, yeah. So I hope our audience heard exactly what you said, which is, it's not really a best practice to try to do that. It's not that you can't, but you talked about the intensity of the way that you work. And think about that. If you're listening, think about that if you're a family member with you on a trip and you're trying to be in the focus level you need to get your work done. What's that environment like for the rest of the family
Mhm.
that thinks, "Oh, you're physically here, but you're not really here?" So take that under consideration. If the work needs to get done, let's just say you don't have the luxury of a really great team at this moment, or you're not in a situation with your workload where you can totally unplug, and yet you've made this commitment to go on this trip. One of the boundaries I'll encourage for a client who just feels like, I'm the monkey in the middle, I just can't figure this one out, is to really tightly define some work hours so you can intensely focus and then shut it off. So
Mhm.
that could be, getting up really early in the morning, maybe before your family routines have started. We used to do this a little bit when our kids were young and we would go to the beach, as I would say to Lori, hey, somewhere between 6 and 10 in the morning, I'm just going to get up and push really hard to get as much off of my plate as I can so that I can then close that laptop, put the phone
Mhm.
away, and go have fun. I think if you can set really firm boundaries, it's possible. The ones that don't work well, the ones I hear about later, are the ones where, yeah, I kind of carried my laptop around in my backpack all day and checked on things, or I used my phone to do everything. And so my whole experience with my family was, all the photos were of me, doing this. And it's not really, sorry, those of you that listened on Apple or Spotify, I just thought, what doing what? Hey, there's a fun fact. If you want to find us, we're on YouTube. You can actually see what this podcast looks like. Um, I just hope most of us at the end of the day, if we're going to try to plan a week away, decide up front, is this a truly unplugged week? And then design it according to that. If it's not an unplugged week, then really push yourself to define tight boundaries and then communicate those clearly with your family ahead of time. So if there's going to be consternation, you're working through that plan before you get there. Because once you're live without a net, that can really ruin what could have been a fun vacation and might end up really creating some hurt feelings. So fair enough. Okay. Any other thoughts on that one, or can we segue to the big trip?
I would just say the calendar is a powerful thing. And typically, if I block a week, clients will wait and they'll make an appointment for the next week. So I don't, I try to, if I do nothing else, even if I work some, I try to at least not have any client appointments because that's where you have to get back in your normal clothes and you have to get on video and you have to be on versus just, hey, do I have some emails I need to return real quick? Do I need to? That's a different level of work than, hey, I just, and am I sitting down with a client, giving them all my focus, or am I just quickly forwarding some emails to some people? I see that as two different work levels. So if you can at least not have any of the client appointments for the week, that can sometimes rest my brain enough.
Totally makes sense. Okay. So when a long trip happens, and I want to be clear, this isn't going to be the regular week away. This is at least 2 weeks, sometimes three, depending on what your family routine is or how special this event is. Maybe it involves something really special, like an anniversary, or maybe it involves a, child who's graduated. Maybe it involves even a child getting married. Something's going on that makes this more than just a week away. It's a true getaway. I- When you did this as a family, what were some things that you had to do? Because now you can't count on the fact that, hey, next week I can get back and catch up on all of that. You're really trying to be unplugged. Tell me how
Mhm.
you created the mindset and then the strategy to have such a long trip. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. So first, it was a lot of prep and getting my inbox close to zero, getting everything taken care of. So I didn't feel like there was stuff that I should work on while I'm on vacation. So just knowing, hey, everything is done that I can do. And that's a difficult part to get to because that alone can take a month to get to that point. Then again, setting up those expectations of I am not going to be checking email because I'm going to be 8 hours time
Mm.
zone, 9 hours time zone different. So I may pop in the morning to get anything signed for an hour, but that's going to be about it. And that's only going to be every few days. So it'll be handled. But overall, you guys are in charge of everything and reach out if something comes up. But this is what I'm doing and I'm not going to be here. So there you go.
All right. So in this particular case, I think there are some things there that we should unpack a little bit because if someone's going to
Mhm.
try to do this, um, it usually freaks them out. Most of the time, when I hear someone say, my family and I want to take a big trip, but I don't know how to do this. I don't know how. I think some of it starts with we've got to really make the mental decision up front that this is a good thing, that this is not
Yes.
scary, this is not dangerous. This is a good thing. It's a good thing for you. It's a good thing for those that you're probably experiencing that trip with. And it could be a good thing for your team because the way you just described that was all that preparation was you walking them through different levels of delegation based on the situations that could come up. And think of how good that is for you to have to think that far in advance, to be prepared for situations that are a week, 2, or even 3 weeks down the road, depending on the length of your trip. That really puts you as a leader in a position of being far more prepared than you would be on any given Tuesday. And so
Mhm.
I think it's good for the person trying to get away as well, because it really helps them recognize that, oh, this is possible even if I didn't have a trip. I can think ahead. I can think ahead and
Mhm.
anticipate based on things that are very predictable, especially in the type of production cycle we see in the real estate marketplace. There are certain workflows that happen in certain timeframes that are very predictable. Now, the actual details aren't always predictable. As we know, we end up
Mhm.
working through a lot of things that nobody saw coming until we found out about it. But that's the part about preparing your team, is getting them ready for the fact that you've got this, you can handle this. When these things happen, you know who to go to or how to find the answer you need. And think of how empowering that could be to your team to realize, oh my gosh, we really can do this. And imagine how that might make you feel as the team leader to realize maybe I've been micromanaging for a long time and my team's capable of doing a lot more than I realized. What did it
Mhm.
feel like when you got back from a long trip? What did you do to debrief that experience with your team?
I was definitely very thankful for being able to get away and probably approach things from a little bit different perspective after that, I would say. When you know you can leave that long, the weird thing is or one thing maybe just to set up your brain for, you will lose business a little bit, and that's okay. Some people are gonna need like, "Hey, I need to meet in person and you're not there and I went elsewhere." That's okay. That's okay. So you have to be all right with that and not be regretful of those things because everybody needs a break. And if someone isn't going to wait because they got under contract and they can only meet in person, that's okay. It's going to be fine. But it is weird because you have to get slowly reintroduced to what's
Yeah.
happening. And that's the strange thing is reentry is really weird for a while.
Kathryn, you just said something that as a coach, I want to push on really hard for our audience. Think about the power of that. You will lose a little bit of business. I think you even said, someone will be a little disappointed that you weren't available and they will go elsewhere. So consider this fact if you're listening. On that trip, if you choose to do that, a client potentially goes elsewhere. If you choose not to do that and you stay super focused on your clients, might be your family member that chooses to go elsewhere. They're the one that says, you know what, mom's not there for me. Dad's not paying attention. Or even harder, might be your spouse that's like, I don't really enjoy traveling with you. You're barely here. That person going elsewhere, literally or emotionally, is not a good thing for your overall situation. So just consider the trade off. Yes, it's possible that someone goes somewhere. Make sure it's someone that you can handle the bounce back with. A family member often takes the brunt of that, and yet they're the ones that supposedly we love the most, we care about the most. So
Mhm.
let's act like that. Let's actually put our emphasis on prioritizing them, because that's the whole point of the getaway or the week away or the long trip away, is to invest in a change of pace at a change of place so you can get a little bit different perspective on that relationship. Kathryn, any closing thoughts on this one? Because I think we covered all three types of getaways. You gave us some really great insights from your personal experiences. Any closing advice for our audience?
So I think that some things to do while you're away is we really haven't touched on this yet, but try to be there as much as you can be there. And I mean, like, you touched on this quickly, but look at the stuff. If you bring out your phone to take a picture, try not to check email if you can help it. Like really be present as much as you can be because I think that that's important. Take pictures because that does help you be present.
Yeah.
So I think that even if you're getting a few hours of just sitting outside in the morning watching the sunrise and taking that in, try to use that as much as possible. I was talking to a friend yesterday about breaks because we went to a women's conference and somebody brought it up and she said, I think I'm always working on a trip. And so I feel like I have to take a lot of trips because I never really feel rested after a trip.
Mm.
And maybe if I truly unplugged, I wouldn't have to take as many trips because I think that's hard for my team when I'm gone so much because they see me taking trips, but I'm really working every trip. So is there a way to be more efficient with your travel so
Mm.
that you can actually get a break?
Yeah, if I can just grab one of those thoughts because it's such a good one. One trip that I took, I remember in particular, I took two phones. Most of us, if we've upgraded our phone in recent years, we end up with an old phone. I'll bet somewhere in your desk, somewhere, in a
Hmm.
drawer at your nightstand, wherever you keep it, is an old phone. It's possible to use the old phone for email and messages. Like you can fire that thing up. It's not a problem. But maybe the newer one, the one with the better camera on it, like turn the notifications off and just make it a camera for that trip so that you're capturing all the goodness and the experiences
Mm.
that you have without that temptation to multitask, which I think we covered in a previous episode is a bit of a myth in the first place. Um, Kathryn, thanks for unpacking some of these today. I hope our audience took some notes. I hope they took away some good tips. And listen, folks, if you've got some further thoughts on this, because I know most of you are like, yeah, well, he doesn't know my team or she doesn't understand what it's like with my family. Look, I believe that everybody's situation is unique. We're not trying to cover every angle of this. We're just trying to give you the broad strokes of what it really takes to be successful if you're going to unplug for a weekend, a week, or a longer trip. And I hope you took some goodness today, and I hope you'll share that with somebody who might benefit from hearing it. Thanks so much for being a part of today's podcast. Our podcast is called Building Bigger Lives because we want to help you build a bigger life. Please share it. Find us on Apple and Spotify. Of course, you can watch us on YouTube, and we look forward to seeing you on an episode very soon.